Might as well rip the band-aid off, slice open the weird zombie assassin and let the truth fly out. The Night Sisters, witches, magic, whatever you want to call it, is probably the worst thing to ever be added to Star Wars in recent years. And I don't mean their recent portrayal in shows like Ahsoka, I don't mean that they've been butchered, mangled, and character assassinated from what they once were. I mean period. They are one of, if not the worst, most world-shattering thing to ever be incorporated into this franchise. If you've been watching Ahsoka, you'd know this group, faction, concept, whatever, have been a pretty big part of it. Instrumental in the plans of Grand Admiral Thrawn and introducing a whole load of stuff to more mainstream Star Wars fans that just seeks to confuse and complicate their understanding of everything we've been led to believe before. Space wizards is the term often used to describe the Jedi. Warriors in space with a loose mystical connection to the Force. A vague magic system that can be drawn upon by certain characters to give them the ability to move stuff with their minds, get some spidey sense, and feel in touch with spirituality. For the Night Sisters, however, the term evil space witch is not an exaggeration. Their powers seem limitless, and in Ahsoka, we've seen this been stretched to greater levels of what the fuck is even happening. Resurrection, teleportation, possession, manifestation have all been things introduced as a consequence of their existence. Powers that stretch and deform the vague mysticism of the Jedi and the Force, inadvertently beginning to break the delicate balance this universe relies upon to function, and doing so in a way that now permanently damages future stories as well as past ones. In recent years, Star Wars has gotten too big for its own good, and by that I don't mean it's dominating the box office, smashing streaming records, forcing millions of grown men to kill their grandma so they can cash in on the will and get tickets to Star Wars Celebration. If you've been around the block in the last 10 years, you'll know that's very much not the case. When I say it's gotten too big for its own good, I mean in universe. Content has been the name of the game for this franchise in the last few years, and we've gotten several movies, comics, games, and shows that all seek to make their mark on the Star Wars universe, adding their own additions to the lore, mechanics, rules, whatever you want to call them, and now more than ever, it's symbiotic. Before Disney's purchase of Star Wars in 2012, you had Star Wars Legends, a world of external material that comprised all the games, comics, books, all made as to not contradict with one another, but containing a lot of wild stuff you never would have spotted remotely close to George Lucas's Star Wars. This universe was like a waking nightmare for me as a kid. There were zombies, Sam Witwer was chopping apart other Sam Witwers, bringing Star Destroyers out of the sky and kickstarting the beginnings of the rebellion. Like a white version of Andor with 2 lightsabers and a dream, instead of a dead mum and moral ambiguity. I think I remember reading that the lovable Chewbacca got killed by an asteroid or something, Jar Jar's dad tried to kill himself, Luke had a drug addict grandson, which is very cool. Pretty much every idea you can think of at some point was conceived, and any character you see in the background has a whole Silmarillion worth of lore and information surrounding them. However, as much as Star Wars fans will deny this and swear up and down that it's not true and you're lying, the fact of the matter is that this kind of external material never mattered or had any real consequence. It was all considered canon pretty loosely until the big man himself decided he wanted to do his own thing, and then all the books got tossed into the fire. They could introduce whatever they wanted. Boba Fett could be a former celibate space sheriff called Jaster Murillo, and the impact on the story we actually got to see and experience in cinemas at the small screen would mean nothing in the face of it. But now we're in an era where that hierarchy of canon has been eradicated, where almost every part of this universe is on equal level of canon, and where you can't really ignore some of the parts of this continuity that don't quite add up. You got Jedi or former Jedi popping up everywhere, kind of devaluing the whole point of Revenge of the Sith and Luke's whole purpose. Obi-Wan and Vader had a whole second fight, Leia was involved in that, flying in the face for a message in A New Hope. The universe is overflowing with Luke Skywalkers at this point that it's getting more and more contrived to try and write them out, and the lines are getting blurred because they aren't unique to or limited to their middle ground not important state of limbo in comics or video games. They are now vital to the universe, and so intrinsically tied to the movies and what most consider to be real Star Wars. Fallen Order establishes Purge Troopers and this castle for the Inquisition, so it shows up in Kenobi, a show with 2 of the most iconic characters and actors returning to reprise their roles. Rebels created a weird time travel room, and now that's here in Ahsoka, a show also tying itself to the past and future of the movies, bringing back iconic actors. Clone Wars and Rebels have introduced characters, locations, and ideas that stretched out to every corner of this universe, to where it's not supplemental anymore, it's essential. Inquisitors, Darksabers, and Ahsoka Tano are now just as much a part of Star Wars' key iconography and lore as Darth Vader, the Force, or the Galactic Empire. Therefore, the things they introduce can't be written off, like zombie stormtroopers, Sam Witwer destroying battleships, and Jar Jar Binks' father almost ending it all. What affects one thing has large-reaching implications, and I hate to drive the point home some more, but we don't have the benefit of being able to write off zombie stormtroopers as something just made in a one-off novel as a fun conceptual experiment. It's in live action now. Hayden Christensen Jackson is in the show, giving it legitimacy to more casual Star Wars fans as they bear witness to the emergence of actual witchcraft in the Star Wars universe. Not an energy field that certain people can use to maybe push somebody over, but actual magic that's capable of resurrecting the dead, and not just as mindless beasts that can only slumber towards you. They can pick up and use blasters, they can take commands, sometimes they take cover and have self-preservation. One minute these zombie stormtroopers are shambling towards their targets, bumping into one another, and the next they're cutting doors open with lasers or maybe some kind of breach charge. They're running, they stop when they see a ledge that could kill them. If this guy was a resurrected Inquisitor who got brought back by magic, then there really is no limits to what it's capable of. He can use the Force still, he can fight against Ahsoka one-on-one, doing little moves, he can speak, he can perform complex actions like flying a spaceship. If this is something that exists in the Star Wars universe, then death really does have no consequence, because then you can just bring anybody back. Something Star Wars fans have definitely latched onto.
Dude, I'm gonna lose my mind. It's gonna be Maul or something.
What? That's what the dark magic is?
Watching Ahsoka after this was introduced and then seeing the conversation surrounding it online, you had people who were writing off every convenience or unexplained moment as some kind of illusion or resurrection from the witches. Why is Ezra here? How'd he show up so quick? Clearly he's witch magic. He's not real. He doesn't exist. Why is the stormtrooper armor so scuffed and makeshift? Are they undead? Have they been killed and brought back so many times that they're just filling in the gaps? That one might have been true, but the point is when you introduce the idea of magic in the Star Wars universe and not really define it as anything other than another method of using the Force with no known limits, then you completely break the foundation of this world. Part of why I like Star Wars so much is that it's a universe that nearly any story can be told in, with it not really falling super hard into one particular genre under science fiction. On the one hand, you have the mysticism and spirituality of the Jedi, a group whose connection to this thing called the Force is very unclear and subjective. Only certain people have it, and your skill with it isn't determined by being physically strong, but rather how in touch with yourself you are. Then you have the straight up science fiction elements, political deception, wars, space battles, strategies, and a series of events that occurs due to maneuvering a system. Both of those things may intersect, but they never overtake or merge with one another. The fact that a few can tap into this mystical energy source is just a part of life in this universe that, whether you like it or not, is explained away with some sci-fi jargon to hopefully lend more credence to it being a thing. I don't see what could justify this. I don't see how it benefits the universe to have a group of ultra powerful Force users capable of all these crazy feats that go beyond just the mental or the spiritual. It's a problem of escalation. Once a show or movie or game now retroactively introduces something new, that sends ripples throughout the rest of the universe. It's kinda scary when you find some of the worst things in Star Wars and trace it back to its roots. You got a couple of characters getting resurrected like Maul, and you just kind of brush off the fact that the only reason he survived was he was just so damn angry that he refused to die. Because he's a cool character with a lot of stuff that justifies him coming back. The story is better off for having him survive. But then you do that and somebody else decides to bring back the Emperor. One guy survives a stab wound and you got like one or two of those before it gets ridiculous. This girl got stabbed as a kid and survived, then she stabbed another guy and he survived, then she gets stabbed again and goes on a fun revenge quest, lightsaber fighting with a giant circle-shaped hole in her chest. And because you had that happen, you get more of it because now there's precedent. The more and more stuff like this goes on, the more and more I find it hard to lump it all together as part of the same canon. I don't really care about books and that because that can be written over as much as anyone wants and it will have zero impact. But movies? Shows? That's something that stings a lot deeper because it's so intrinsically tied to Star Wars and the cultural zeitgeist. When Jedi Survivor came out, my brother asked me about it and said, "Oh, but it's not really Star Wars, is it? Like, in the same story as the movies?" And then I had to do a double take in my mind because, yeah, this is all pretty silly, isn't it? You got like 50 Jedi characters running around 10 years after the genocide. One of them gets like a ghost arm. Cal Kestis went from being an out-of-his-depth kid with survivor's guilt into the most boring carbon copy of Luke Skywalker. The kinda just goes to show how much of a red-headed plank of wood he is and how this franchise is pretty strapped for original ideas. You have so many impossible set pieces that exist for the sake of having cool gameplay moments, which is valid, but let's face it, Ian from Shameless is one day gonna make the jump from dead-eyed video game graphics to live action. He'll probably high-five Luke, do a buddy cop adventure with the Mandalorian, trying to solve a violent sexual assault in the space ghetto of Rintar 4, and that unspoken disconnect between video game fun that exists to be a video game and nothing more, and material meant to be a companion piece to the original 6 movies is broken. And you know what else that game has that sets a weird world-building precedent? This girl, a space witch who can summon spears, teleport, and create portals through the unending cosmos so you can beat up a single father with a lightsaber. It feels like since this universe has become so vast recently with so many different stories, ideas, and concepts all under the same roof, it just makes any stories in the future resemble that one annoying kid you used to play Star Wars with.
Nah, you didn't hit me, I use force block lightsaber. I don't need my lightsaber, I force beat metal into a pulp. Haha, fuck you, I use my force teleport, force necromancy, force make a guy buff, force cure somebody's schizophrenia.
Yes, that's actually how they made Darth Maul not insane. I'm not joking, this is how screwed this faction is. Limitations are good. Limitations are what keep things consistent and ensure everything remains on equal, strong footing. So, maintain those limitations. Just because you can color outside the lines doesn't mean you should. Establish a boundary on what's canon and what isn't, and don't put actual magic, potions, and hexes into Star Wars, because that's just straight up bad and I hate it. And most importantly, subscribe to this channel and leave a comment on what you thought of this video. Do you agree? Do you not? I want to know. I'm not blind to the recent outpour of support my last video got. It's been really rewarding to see it do well, and it's great to read all of your comments. It encourages me to keep moving forward with this. I've been making a much bigger video on Ahsoka as a whole, and I'm putting this out just to be a fun in-between project that can hopefully keep you all sated until I make that video, with the possibility of something else possibly coming out in between to break up the Star Wars slop. But yeah, subscribe and turn on notifications if you want to see what's next as soon as it's up, engage with the video and join my Discord. I'd love to meet you all. That's all for today. Goodbye.